a plan is only as good as the people that are going to execute it. So we have our plan, but we do an amazing job developing talent. So if you want to go through corporate America, the CEO of UPS comes from Home Depot. The CEO of Lowe's comes from Home Depot. The CEO of Tractor Supply comes from Home Depot. And I could go on and on and on, but we have, I think, far and away the best talent development network, certainly in our industry and in all of retail in many ways. And so
So welcome to the first episode of the 2026 season of Inspiring Innovation. We are thrilled to have a world-class guest today, somebody who's been personally very influential in my life. And so I'm very grateful for him taking the time to share his insights with our audience. He's got a proven record of being really one of the most effective people at turning around companies in our time, and he's his principles in the book Right Away All at Once have helped a lot of people turn their personal lives around as well. So Greg Brenneman is our guest today. He's served as the CEO of companies like Continental Airlines, Burger King, Quiznos, and he has been a partner at Bain Capital, at CCMP. And he is a director he is the lead director of Home Depot board of directors and has served on incredible boards like ADP and many, many others. So we're extremely grateful to have him on. He's had mentors and worked with people like Jamie Dimon, Mitt Romney, President H.W. Bush, just to name a few. And he's got roots from here in the state of Kansas. So, and with the local university, Washburn, and we're very fortunate to have him on. I have personally gifted his book to more people than any other book that I've gifted before. And so we are going to be giving away a few of those as part of this podcast. So we're really appreciative of having him on, and personally, Kylene, my wife, and I have enjoyed being at a marriage retreat at his house in Beaver Creek. So I can personally speak to the fact that he has really, the personal side of his book has a lot of power and can really help you and turn around where you're at within your life. So really excited to have Greg on. And Greg, we are a company based out of Topeka, Kansas. Polo Custom Products corporate headquarters is here. You've actually helped us with our one-page plan as a business and worked with our executive team, and we're super grateful for that. That's been successful in our roadmap for the last 4 or 5 years now. And you teach a class at Washburn, which is how we got connected, or we put on a class that the curriculum is your book, or Washburn University does, and I've just seen the value that students get out of it, both from a business side, personal side, and learning to give charitably as well. They make some really tough decisions on where money is going to go in the community. And it's like board experience for these students that have to disagree on where it's going, have really tough discussions to determine how they can make the best impact. And it's a really meaningful process. So we appreciate all the things that you do. I mean, in my former career, I was in philanthropy, and then I read your book and I learned so much more about philanthropy. So you really give joyfully, and it's a great example for a lot of people. So thank you for joining the podcast today. And I'd love to start off with your Kansas roots. Can you tell us about where you're from and your Uncle Lyle and what influence he had on your life?
Sure. No, Sean, it's great to be here with you. You and Kylene are special people. So it's always great to see you. And and be here. So thanks for asking me to join you today. Yeah, in terms of my roots are definitely in Kansas. I grew up in a little town in south central Kansas by the name of Heston. There was a company there when I grew up called Heston Corporation, and a town of about 3,000 people. The town is still doing well. My parents still live there. They're retired. They're both 86 years old and doing well, and are still all there with all their high school buddies. So they've really had great community there. It was a great place to grow up. My Uncle Lyle was probably the first mentor I had, as you indicated, Sean, and he was an inventor. So you talk about inspiration and invention. He invented the first hay baler. So before he invented the hay baler, you had to take hay with a pitchfork. Talking to a bunch of Kansans, they actually know what that is. I have to describe it when I'm telling this in New York, what a pitchfork is. You had to take a pitchfork and throw loose hay on the back of a trailer or wagon. And he invented the first hay baler. And then he invented the first auger that takes grain from the combine to the to the truck, or to a silo somewhere. He invented that. He then invented the big square balers and the big round balers you see when you see baled hay. Mm-hmm. And he turned that into a Fortune 500 company called Heston Corporation. Mm-hmm. And so if you asked him what his mission in life was, he would tell you it was to mechanize things for farmers.
Nice.
And he did that. He taught himself how to fly. And so my first job was actually watering trees on his farm at the combination of what was his landing strip and his driving range. He hit golf balls out there too. So a grass strip, and so he was really a great mentor to me. In the way he kind of grew that company and grew that up. But if you ask him what his real calling was, not just his mission to mechanize things for farmers, he would tell you it was to give away all his money before he died. And he always thought that if you gave away money to people and you created jobs for people by doing that, and he was really focused on creating jobs in doing this, that you earned the right to speak into their lives, that you helped them, their family, the community, and it gave you a platform to actually talk to them about things other than work. And that was really meaningful to him. So he started the largest dairy in Latin America, bought a bunch of used dairy equipment, shipped it down there. He built, actually, in Aspen, Colorado, if you go there, it's there today, a chapel in the middle of town called the Aspen Chapel. And it's used by all sorts of faith groups. His son is still the chairman of it. Wow. And it's dedicated to my grandpa and my great uncle, who were Mennonite preachers that traveled the area preaching in churches in the area. So he had a very big reach and a big impact on me. He actually, with his goal of giving away all his money before he died at 99, and he was playing golf still the week he died. But he was 97 years old. He was in his house, and his daughter Susan went in to see him, and she said, "Dad, you know how you told us that you wanted to give away all your money to those less fortunate before you died?" He said, "Yeah, Susan, I've been saying that for 60 years, And she said, "Well, Dad, you're 97, you're still here, and you did it. You already gave it all away. It's gone." So, he's the only guy I know who's really accomplished that. It's very hard to do, yes. Right? Because we all don't know how long we're going to live and want to protect it. So, very, very generous person. And that combination of innovation and creating businesses, creating jobs, which I think is what God called us on this earth to do, mm-hmm. as business people, to create employment for others. Mm-hmm. And then the generosity to take those riches, and he became a millionaire before that was common, and give them away had just a lasting impact on my life. And so when I graduated high school in Heston, I was looking for a place that most of my classmates were staying in farming, so about half of them going to college. And so I picked Washburn because it had a good law school. I thought I was going to be a lawyer. Fortunately, I got cured of that pretty fast. But it was a great school, and Rhonda and I met there. I met my wife there. Our sophomore year, we got married right after graduation, but it was just instrumental in our lives. And so Washburn has continued to be a big part of our lives all throughout our married life. I'm 64, so that was a long time ago we were there, but we stay very close to the university. That's a little bit on the Kansas roots. And we Andre's entire family is still in and around Topeka, and mine is in Heston. So we get back. She gets back more frequently than I do, but we both get back quite frequently.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's sounds like quite the inspiration, and it's incredible. I've heard the saying, give with a warm hand rather than a cold hand. And then in your book, you talk about giving joyfully. And so I think those are two really powerful lessons. You might as well enjoy your giving, while you're around, and to do it 2 years early is pretty impressive. Hopefully he had enough to support himself for the next 2 years there, but
I think he was fine, it's very impressive, but hopefully we can leave a little bit of that same legacy of giving with folks. And that was, you mentioned the Brenneman series at Washburn. So the students in that series, they actually prepare a life plan. So they prepare, we talk about the 5 F's: faith, family, friends, fitness, and finance. And in each of those categories, what are you going to do specifically? So they, for the first time, kind of plot out a life plan. They prepare a budget. And many of us used to have to do a budget in high school. It was part of the curriculum. But that ended a long time ago. That was there when I was in high school, and now they talk about a bunch of stuff that's less useful than that. So for the first time, they prepare their own budget, their own life. And then we have 2 cohorts of 20 kids each semester, so 40 kids a semester. And for each cohort, we give them $25,000 to give to the community. So as you mentioned, Sean, they go through a process of evaluating charities in the community, in the Topeka community, and donate, which has been great for them to understand, what it doesn't, it's not all about money. It's really time, talent, and treasure. And if you're in college, you don't have a lot of treasure, but you do have time and talent. And so many of them start, donating their time and participating in a volunteer basis in the charities that they select. So it's very cool to see them develop a plan for their life and what their blue chips are, what the most important things are. And then go on from there to make contributions to the community, initially with some money we give them to evaluate. But they do the evaluation and they fall in love with these charities. And the community, the Topeka community, then has just a whole new cadre of young, very talented, very smart volunteers. So it really works well. Then they actually go through and they come up with a little board of directors for themselves. So they build a little team around themselves that can help them execute their plan and build a little mentorship team around them. We've done over 600 kids so far. We've been doing this, I guess, 8 years or whatever. And it's honestly, Washburn has done such a great job executing this program. It's unbelievable. The teaching, the teachers, the conversations are just incredibly powerful. And so it's very cool to see the kids rally around that.
Yeah, one of the things I feel like is special about Washburn is that it brings such a diverse background of students, both non-traditional, traditional, lower socioeconomic. So when you were talking about the budget, I mean, there are kids in there that are just mad that they'd never learned this before, and they're learning about compounding interest for the first time, and they're excited about the plan, but just flabbergasted.
We give them each a little bit of money, a little scholarship for this too, which is really cool, Sean, because to your point on compounding interest, most of them, they're taught about IRAs, and most of them use their stipend that we give them to start their a Roth IRA. And if you start a Roth IRA early in life, and the compounding interest, we all know how that formula works. But they get started, and then as they work, they continue to give to it and continue to save. And it really sets them off on the right financial trajectory. So that course encompasses and accomplishes so many different missions in their lives. It's just very cool to see how that's developed. And Washburn has done just an awesome job with executing on that course.
Well, and one more great Washburn anecdote here. I mean, I feel like what they have been doing with this last campaign is going to be transformational for the region of Northeast Kansas. And you made a substantial gift to really make that campaign successful. So I was just curious what your hoping to see at Washburn and for the region really in the future with that gift that you made?
Washburn's really a jewel of the region. As I talk to my buddies, right, I have buddies from Washburn, we talk about the fact this is really our time. It's our time to make a difference and to have an impact. We now have some of us and many of us accumulated, some resources, and now it's time to actually impact others with those. That doesn't happen with every generation, but it seems like about every 75 years or 100 years, there's an opportunity to really do something special.
Yeah. And
we're in the middle of that. So Washburn has a unbelievable management team led by the president, Julie Mazurchak. And, Marshall is over at the Endowment Association and Marshall Meek. So they have an A-plus team. They're really great executors. You can say that about very few places in academia, that they're really good at execution. But these guys are really good at execution. You don't get any of the normal university stuff of the protests and the this and the that and all the messed up stuff. These guys are really good about getting stuff done. And a best example of that to me is the story of Washburn Tech, where they actually went out and bought Kaw Valley Technical School and have built this massive VOTech program now, which is so needed in every community, or short of skilled technicians of all types. And then you can get your college degree while you're getting your technical degree. That program has attracted interest and donation from all over the country. But Rhonda and I gave $50 million last year to Washburn to really kickstart that. Part of that money will be spent to build a new allied health center, nursing, therapies, just all of that, what healthcare is like 22% of the economy now. All of that, just very practical occupational stuff to benefit the community. So on one side, we got, Washburn Tech doing mechanics and electricians and plumbers and HVAC and, everything you can imagine. And on the other side, we're really pouring into the allied health arena, as well as the business school and developing out the rest of it. And then Washburn has the best law school, certainly in the state of Kansas, probably in about a 5-state region, and a brand new campus there as well. So there's no set of facilities that, as this program, completes and gets built out, this capital campaign, there won't be a campus in the state of Kansas that is nicer than the Washburn campus. And the net result of all of that is Washburn's growing enrollment faster than any other school in the state, and impacting more and more people. So it is kind of a golden time for Washburn and for Topeka, I think. Folks like Advisors XL, Cody Foster and Dave Callahan that have come along and created a behemoth of the company. And you now have folks traveling from Kansas City and Lawrence to work at Advisors XL in Topeka. And who would have imagined that? For years and years, folks were commuting the other direction. So it's really, I think, an exciting time in Topeka.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So inspired by the gift that you and Rhonda made and what the impact's going to be for the long term, and that you're bringing your friends along with you on that. That's incredibly exciting. I ran by the Brenneman School of Business with some friends this morning on a workout, and it's coming along. So I'm really excited to see how that turns out. Now, if you don't mind, we'll switch over to the business side of the podcast here. And it's interesting. Bain Capital is where you got your start, and Bain Capital has actually bought and sold, and then rebought and sold, and took executives from companies that we work with and started new companies. And so Bain's story kind of runs in with Polo's. And so what I was reading in the book was that there was a time where Bain was struggling, and there was a gentleman that some have heard of named Mitt Romney that helped lead Bain's turnaround. And you worked with Mitt early on in your career. And so I was curious, what impact did he have on you? And then how did you kind of gain his favor to go start this Dallas office of Bain Capital? And then how did you get the reps and the experience to come up with your go forward 5-step plan? You know, what lessons did you learn?
It's a great question. It was actually Bain Consulting, but Bain Consulting and Bain Capital were the same thing at the time.
Okay.
They later split, and so now Bain Capital is that. But Mitt did a great job. So the founders at Bain did a big LBO of Bain right as I was starting, basically in the late 80s, and took a lot of capital out. And then, you know, the economy went into a bit of a depression, and Bain was in a little bit of trouble in kind of paying off the debt they had, you know, used to do that LBO. So they asked Mitt, who was a Bain partner, Bain Consulting partner, who had just gone to start Bain Capital. Bain Capital had just started at the time as part of Bain, to come back and, you know, right size, you know, Bain and get it off on the right foot. So at that point in time, there were 3 of us. I had just started. I'd been there about a year. I went to him and said, hey, we want to go open an office in Dallas, Texas. We had a client in Monterrey, Mexico, and we were flying back and forth every week from Boston. He said, you know, I think that's a great idea. And he had changed the compensation system at Bain, so it was about office profitability as opposed to just how long you've been there, right? You know, what kind of profits did you drive? Yeah. So we were 3 pretty young, aggressive guys. We went down to Dallas, and we had one client at the time down in Dallas, and we lost that client, or in Mexico, we lost that client. And so we spent about 30 days saying, we don't have any clients, any revenue, nothing. How are we going to build, you know, how are we going to build this practice down there? And the first client we signed up was a Trammell Crow company. It was a real estate company to do a turnaround, and went in and led that turnaround. I got really good as part of that at doing corporate turnarounds. Yeah. And within a couple of years, the Bain office in Dallas had grown from the 3 of us to 125 people. We became very famous for doing corporate turnarounds. And I was the turnaround guru now in my late 20s at Bain, you know, as a young guy. And I got put on the board of Bain in my late 20s, which I think I was, I don't know, 25 years younger than anybody else on the board. But it was because we were generating so much economic benefit to Bain from doing these corporate turnarounds. We got, you know, really, like I said, really good at them. And so Harvard Business School, where I went, really gave me my chops in analyzing companies very quickly. We did 800 cases in 2 years. Wow. And then at Bain, I went company to company to company to company, initially doing consulting work. It might be cost reduction or strategy or whatever. But that real quickly morphed into very complete turnarounds of companies that were very broken and fixing them. And so I got a lot of reps between the time I went to Bain at 26 and the time I left Bain to become president of Continental Airlines at 32, doing corporate turnarounds. And I'd have 5 or 6 of them going at once, you know, that I was helping the management teams turn around. Malcolm Gladwell has a statement. I don't know how many of you have read Malcolm Gladwell's books, The Tipping Point and Outliers. Outliers in those books, but he has a thing that in order to be really great, you have to have 10,000 hours of experience. And he goes through the Beatles and then playing in bars in Germany until they had their thing, you know, their tune kind of nailed and their songs nailed. He goes through many examples of that, you know, just that experience setting time. And that time at Bain for me was that time where I could experience in rapid fire a lot of different companies at a very senior level. And we were fortunate to, you know, complete those turnarounds. And so our profit per partner in Dallas was 5 times any other office in Bain. So we kind of found a model to really do well economically as those companies did well. So it was kind of a magical time. That was great. You know, one of the things Mitt told me, he said, Greg, in every interaction, you either gain or lose share. There are no neutral interactions. So as you think about interacting with people, and he was mainly speaking about CEOs of companies we were working with, but it goes for your personal life too. You're either gaining share or you're losing share. So how do you create personal interactions where you gain share and you gain capability and you gain ability to get things done? The other thing they used to say a lot of is the 80% right strategy with 100% chance at implementation is much better than the 100% right strategy that nobody will do anything with. And he was right on that as well. So he had some good little quips.
Do it right away and all at once, right?
Yeah, that wasn't it. That was more
yeah.
To do turnarounds, that's what you had to do. So away and all at once.
And Greg, when you were getting your 10,000 hours, what takeaways do you have that were common so our audience is large OEMs and medical devices and aviation and power sports, safety equipment, things like that. What's something universal that you learned in those 10,000 hours of maybe some common roadblocks companies have, and then how you transform those? And you could use an example like Continental if you'd like, and then I wouldn't mind digging into Home Depot too at some point. But what's a common issues you saw going into these companies, and ways to turn those things around with the 5 steps that you see could, across different industries?
Just to kind of start with a preview or an overview, I found there were 2 kinds of companies in the world. There were companies that were fundamentally broken. So when I went to Continental Airlines or went to Burger King, for example, those companies were flat on their back. I mean, they were days from another bankruptcy. They were not doing well at all. They were, everybody knew they were terrible. At Continental's case, it was $4.99 on Fortune 500's most admired company list. I mean, it was like a public disaster, right? It was 10th out of 10 in on-time performance, 10th out of 10 in baggage handling, 10th out of 10 in customer complaints, and had 10 presidents in 10 years and went bankrupt twice in the 10 years. So, it was a disaster, right? So that's one kind of company. The other kind of company is what most companies are, which is companies that are what I call satisfactorily underperforming. They're doing just well enough to get by, to where their shareholders or where their customers or where their employees are content and, are okay, but they're not in any stretch hitting the ball out of the park or reaching their full potential. And I found turning around companies that were completely broken was actually pretty easy, because the sickest patients need the best doctors. If if your company's dying, if you have a brain aneurysm, you don't want a proctologist. You need a brain surgeon. But I found those were pretty easy because people were willing to change, right? They knew that the status quo was not going anywhere. The companies that were harder, and most companies most of us are in, are the ones that are satisfactorily underperforming, where we really could do better and we really could change, but not everybody sees the need for it, so you got to bring them along, because change is hard on people. And the way I found to bring folks along in terms of the change that needed to be created in either kind of company was really a 5-step process that's in my book, and Sean, that you refer to. The first step is have a plan and track your progress. And so I would develop with the management team. I'd go in myself initially and sit down by myself and do it, and then test it with the management team. But I'd develop a 1-page plan. So it had to be on 1 page, no less than 14 font, right? And there are 4 cornerstones to that plan: a market plan, a financial plan, a product plan, and a people plan. So the market plan in, say, Continental's, I called Fly to Win. I called it the Go Forward plan, and that actually came from the fact that there are no rear view mirrors on an airline, because the runway behind you doesn't do any good. So I said at Continental, we got to go forward, right? And Gordon Bethune and I, who ran the company, were very much of that mindset. Had a market plan called Fly to Win, a financial plan called Fund the Future, a product plan called Make Reliability a Reality, and a people plan called Working Together. And underneath each of those 4 things across the top of the page, we put the 4 or 5 things that we needed to do to fix the company, that are the real value drivers. So most strategic plans you see are on 200 pages. They go on a desk and nobody ever reads them, right? There's
collecting dust.
Ours was on all the 1-page plans I do for every business to this day is on 1 page with no less than 14 font. And I have a 1-page plan for my business and for my life in my in my backpack sitting right next to me. I carry it with me everywhere I go. I look at it constantly to make sure I'm focused on those most important things, which I call blue chips, and not getting distracted by things that aren't on that page that don't matter. So that's the first step, is have a plan and track your progress. The second step is build a fortress balance sheet. I got that comment from Jamie Dimon. But make sure you have plenty of cash and not too much debt, and you've got the runway financially to execute your plan. The third thing is think money in, not money out. You cannot save your way to prosperity. You can make a pizza so cheap nobody wants to eat it. And so it was, make sure you have growth cures cancer. So make sure you have a growth plan. And we can walk through any of these companies to go through these. The fourth one was build a team, a clean house if necessary. And the last thing was let the inmates run the asylum, or rather empower those that work for you. Once you have your plan, you need a good balance sheet. You need to get the cash for it. You need to think about how to grow revenue as part of that plan. You need to have a team that can actually execute your plan. So you got to take your plan and then take out a blank sheet of paper and say, who do I need to execute this? And then finally, you need to empower the folks in your organization to go execute it, because none of us in these companies can do this ourselves. And innovation is certainly that way. There's very few companies that innovate with one person, right? It's a team. It's a team of people that innovate. So those are the 5 steps. And then if we took Continental on really quickly, market plan, fly to win. Just a quick example, I took a look at our flight schedule, and 30% of the flights were cash flow negative. They weren't covering the cost of the food, the fuel, the crew, the aircraft rent. So I'd say, why are we flying from Greenville to Greensboro 8 times a day when both customers are on the first flight? And they'd say they didn't know. And I'd say, and somebody would say, well, it's strategic. And I'd say, well, when was the last time it made money? They'd say it's never made money. I said, well, how strategic could that be? And couldn't we just charter a Learjet to get you and your girlfriend there? It'd be a lot cheaper than flying all these planes. And so, we went through a process of setting down some of those routes and setting down some airplanes and regaging, putting smaller airplanes where larger airplanes were, so they'd fill up, which allowed us to raise price and kind of turned it around that way. And I got a million examples I could go through in a ton of different companies, but that kind of gives you a sense for the process.
Well, yeah, and I'd love to learn how you approach it from a board leadership standpoint, because you have a lot of executives that do things their own way. But Home Depot, for example, you've been involved on their board for many years. You're now the lead director.
25 years.
Yeah. And know the founders, and they've been mentors to you in different ways throughout the years. And my dad worked at Home Depot in the 90s. And so it's a special place to me. My friend actually recently passed away, a childhood friend, and he had been battling cancer. It was kind of surprising to us. We thought he was winning. And I attended a funeral, and there were about 25 Home Depot associates in their orange aprons that came from all over the country. And he worked in Atlanta. The funeral was in Virginia, and people came from the West Coast out there. And so I found that super inspiring. I sent you a text about it. You shot it over to the CEO, and I think it's a great example of a great company culture. And so I'm curious how you've impacted Home Depot from your level, and how you take your 5-step plan and yet kind of let executive teams run their own race too.
At Home Depot,
But before we get into that, if you are interested in getting a copy of the book, we'll be giving 5 copies away. And so just message Polo Custom Products LinkedIn page and give us an email so we can get in touch with you, and we'll send you a copy of the book, and let us know what you'd like to see on the podcast in the future. If there's any subjects or people or topics that you'd like covered. We love the feedback, and we'd love to engage with the audience more in 2026. So please subscribe and like on the channels that you watch this podcast, and we appreciate you viewing. This podcast is brought to you by Polo Custom Products. We are a custom manufacturer that specializes in sewing, sealing, and thermoforming. We work with project engineers, sourcing professionals, and buyers to design, engineer, and manufacture products that cannot afford to fail. If you're interested in working with us, visit our website at www.polocustomproducts.com and fill out a request for quote form. Now, back to the show.
Our founders, Bernie Marcus, who passed away just last year at 96 years old, Ken Langone and Arthur Blank, who are still alive. They're all very generous, by the way. Bernie built the Atlanta Aquarium and other things. Kenny is the NYU Langone Medical Center, is Ken Langone in New York.
Wow.
And Arthur Blank owns the Atlanta Falcons and the soccer team and a bunch of stuff. So they're amazing guys. And they left the company, they left Home Depot as they got off the board with amazing thing. When they founded the company, they created what's called the inverted pyramid, which actually has customers at the top, then our frontline associates, our orange-blooded associates, then the store managers, then the store support center, essentially corporate, and then the CEO. The board somewhere beneath that, but the pyramid is literally inverted. It basically has served as a kind of benchmark for how to behave along the way. And then they created a value wheel, which basically is the impact we can have on people and our associates and on the community. And the values we're going to live by. And those two things are fundamentally still a part of Home Depot. And then beyond that, it won't surprise you that Home Depot has a one-page plan. And it lays out the sort of markets we're going to focus on, how we're going to do it, the customers that we're on. And we update that every year. We have a day-long strategy session as a board, and management updates it and comes to the board. I'm fortunate in my lead director role. I spend a lot of time talking to the CEO. Ted Decker is our current CEO, and he's amazing. We spend at least one day a year, and sometimes quite a bit more, talking about what we need to do. And one full day, not only as a board, but Ted and I spend time, just the two of us, and we work on that. And the thing we primarily spend time on is people. A plan is only as good as the people that are going to execute it. So we have our plan, but we do an amazing job developing talent. So if you want to go through corporate America, the CEO of UPS comes from Home Depot. The CEO of Lowe's comes from Home Depot. The CEO of Tractor Supply comes from Home Depot. And I could go on and on and on, but we have, I think, far and away the best talent development network, certainly in our industry and in all of retail in many ways. And so, we spend a lot of time making sure our associates have the tools they need to help customers. And that's been a labor of love. To do that. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, and you'd mentioned in the book a CEO who you said was very talented at Home Depot. Was it Frank Blake?
Frank Blake, yeah. Frank was the CEO. The last three CEOs have been Frank Blake, Craig Manier, and now Ted Decker. Okay. But Frank was an amazing guy in many ways. But one of the things that really impacted me of Frank is he would take I call him on Sunday afternoons a lot. On his Sunday afternoons, he would sit down every week and write 200 handwritten thank you letters to people that had done something for him that week. And if you still go around Home Depot, or literally when I went to see Jamie Dimon, I told Jamie of that story, and Jamie opened his drawer and he had 2 notes from Frank in there. And we all have a drawer that we have where people send us nice notes or, say good things about us. And the reason we have that is that kind of encouragement and exhortation is so rare, right? That's why we keep those things, because if everybody did it, it would become normal and, you wouldn't keep them. Right. I learned a lot from Frank about just showing appreciation to people. And if you walk around Home Depot, you'll still have folks that have pinned up on their, in their office a note that Frank sent them. But just a great example of how to lead.
Yeah.
And how to appreciate people that make a difference.
That's an amazing story, and those handwritten notes go a long way, and they're rarer and rarer today. So they are that much more meaningful, I feel like. And so you mentioned Jamie Dimon. Your book is full of so many examples of incredible business stories, and one of them I think was the 2008 crisis, and you and Jamie had some interactions around, what he could do in the midst of all that. Can you tell us a little bit about that historic moment?
He's an amazing person. Let me start there. He's very, obviously everybody knows now he's very talented. I like to say I've known Jamie for a very long time, long before everybody else knew he was that talented. During the financial crisis, I was in New York quite a bit, and in '08, I just called him and I said, Jamie, I hadn't seen you for a while. I'd like to come across the street and just say hi. He said, come on over, Greg. And so I went over to see him, and I got there, and it was pretty early in the morning, and his hair was all messed up. His tie was undone. I said, Jamie, quite honestly, you look terrible. You look like crap. And I said, what are you doing? I said, I want to get out of your hair. I know the financial markets are melting down, and you're trying to kind of help save this thing. And he said, no, Greg, sit down. He said, all I'm doing is waiting for the Secretary of Treasury, who was Hank Paulson at the time, to call and tell me what's the next thing I need to buy. To kind of keep the financial system from going under. And so we started chatting, and I said, Jamie, how can you be like so calm through all this? I mean, this is crazy stuff. Yeah. And he said, well, I've got a fortress balance sheet. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, tell me what that means. And literally in about 2 minutes, he took me through the entire JPMorgan Chase balance sheet and how he had protected it so that it would be okay, right? Through any crisis, long before the financial crisis hit.
Wow.
Now, that was just Jamie in his own mind with his own risk management, making sure he didn't get locked into subprime mortgages and all the things that brought the economy down. I learned more in that conversation about how to think about, I was always pretty good with, I'm a CPA, by background from Washington, finance guy, but in terms of how to really protect and risk manage a company, and the balance sheet of the company by having a fortress balance sheet. So Jamie's an incredible guy. He's still going strong.
All right, last business question. We'll move over to the personal plans. What would you recommend for some of our sourcing and buyers and engineers that run their own departments? They have, kind of project teams to launch products that are going to be in the hospitals in the next couple of years and or on our planes or, safety equipment, all those types of things. What can somebody do with their own department with a one-page plan, and how would you encourage them to lead that effort?
I don't think it matters that it's not a whole company. I think you can take your department and ask the same questions. Ask, what market am I trying to enter? What's the total size of it? How am I going to enter it? How am I going to differentiate myself? What resources do I need? Is the company giving me enough resource? What do I need to ask for? How do I prove there's going to be a payback? Mm-hmm. You think about that. On the product side, what product am I going to deliver? Is it a product customers actually want? Mm-hmm. Are there other products out there that are going to compete with it? Mm-hmm. How am I going to differentiate this to make sure I truly have something special? Mm-hmm. And then finally, how do I create a team and reward a team and encourage a team so that they will on their own innovate, right? So that they are given the ability to fail fast, that they're given the ability to press forward. I was talking to the head of Microsoft AI. I can't remember if it's this week or last week. My time is just like blurring. And she's 36 years old. Asha Sharma is her name. Wow. And she was describing the launching of Grok from Elon Musk, right? From XAI, right?
Yeah.
And I own a little bit of XAI stock, so I was interested in this.
Yeah.
She said they normally it took Microsoft with somebody about 2 to 3 weeks to launch a new AI language model.
Yeah.
And Elon said he was going to do it in 2 days. And the way he does that is he basically says, we're going to meet once every hour And any roadblock that we come up with, we want it identified, and we'll be back in an hour with a solution.
Oh my gosh.
And they launched, 2-3 days later. And just the speed at which that innovation was allowed to have happened because of the way the teams and the feedback loop was set up, was incredibly powerful. And I don't know that we all want to be as crazy as what Elon is, but I think if there was a little more Elon in all of us, right, in terms of demanding speed and turnaround time and getting stuff done, it would make a massive difference.
Absolutely. That's incredible. I've definitely heard about his philosophy on speed but to hear the hour touch base applied to an AI example is incredible.
Read Walter Isaacson's book, on Elon.
Yes.
It's definitely a great read. I'm not promoting everything he does. He's a little bit crazy, but I think there's some lessons in terms of the change that he's created. And if you see what's going on with SpaceX right now, I also own some SpaceX. It's unbelievable what's happening there.
Yeah. I mean, that's things that only governments have been able to do in the past. And so, some of the stories in Walter Isaacson's book about early ships imploding while they're flying it's just, there's some wild things you can't make up. And it is something that is,
you talk about a guy that fails fast. Elon fails fast.
Exactly. Well, Greg, personally, I just came up with refreshed my go forward plan for 2026. My wife and I did a go forward plan, and what I find so meaningful about that is just being intentional with your time, with your life, because if you don't put it down on paper, life passes you by. And so I wanted to get some advice for all of our listeners about how to approach that and go from a life of success to significance, like you talk about in your book.
Yeah, no, it's really important, Sean, and you and Colleen do a great job of that. But you think about life, and kind of when I got to be in my mid 40s, right, I realized that I was personally satisfactorily underperforming. And in the Bible, in the book of Revelation, there's a church Jesus refers to it called Laodicea. And he says, you're neither hot nor cold and you're lukewarm. So I'm going to spit you out. Like, lukewarm was worse than just being cold. I kind of felt like that in my personal life. So I said, if I can write all these one-page plans to turn these companies, Continental, Burger King, et cetera, I wonder if I can write a one-page plan to turn around me. So I sat down and I took out a piece of paper, same thing. And instead of market, financial, product, and people, I wrote faith, family, friends, fitness, and finance, the 5 F's across the top. And then I developed it and refined it. And I ended up changing those titles a little bit. So the first bullet I have is become an intimate of God's. That's kind of my first objective. And that's after a quote that A.W. Tozer, a famous theologian, has that says, God doesn't have favorites, but he does have intimates. And so what would it take to do that? And one of the things that led me to was a group of guys of 3 other CEOs. I'd never had time or made time to do that before. But we started meeting together, listening to a sermon or reading a book, having a conversation, sharing life together. Here we are 21 years later, and I just met with them yesterday morning.
Nice.
And that's after a quote that A.W. Tozer. What would it take to do? And one of the things that led. I'd never had time before. We started meeting, reading a book, having a conversation. If I, spending time with my parents, if I don't write that stuff down and put goals to it, a day goes by, a week goes by, a month goes by, a year goes by, 10 years go by, and all of a sudden you realize you spent your life doing what I call white chips. In poker, there's red chips, white chips, and blue chips. White chips are $1, red chips are $10, and blue chips are $25. And you realize you spend your life doing all those white chip things, and you never get to the things that really matter, to the blue chips in your life. And so on the personal side, the 5 steps are maybe even more important. In fact, as I wrote the book, the folks that wanted me to write the book, and they've been bugging me for maybe 20 years to do it, they basically said, we just want you to write the business piece, we'll do the life piece later. And I said, it'll never happen. I'm only going to do it if I have editorial control and I can do both. So every other chapter is business and then life. Yeah. And so it's really get a good life plan down. The 5 F's are a great way to start, but you can morph that to fit yours. And then the second part of that is basically make sure that you have enough resource to execute your plan, right? If you really want to achieve your life plan, you probably ought to manage how much debt you have. So that the bank doesn't own you, that you own the bank, right? You ought to manage where you're spending your money so that you can be generous when you want to be generous. That if an opportunity opens and you want to take it, or you find a door is opening for you where you need a little liquidity, that you've built it up. Right. So that's the second one. And then it's think money in, not money out in business. In life, it's the opposite. It's think money out, not money in. Generosity is the only cure for materialism. Whatever your faith is, whether you're atheist, agnostic, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, there's like 15 major worldviews. The Enlightenment movement of Immanuel Kant, every one of them, the only thing they're consistent on is that we have a duty to give alms to the poor, to take care of those less fortunate than us. And then build a team is actually putting people around you that can help you execute your plan. You may have some friends. This doesn't work for your mother-in-law, by the way, but you may have some friends that you're working with or you're spending time with, and you realize they're kind of dragging you down. Chances are you're dragging them down too. It doesn't mean you have to get rid of those friends, but if you think in concentric circles of who am I going to be around every day, who am I going to be around once a week, once a month, once a quarter, once a year, you can actually take some of those people that are not like getting you to a place where you're able to execute what you think you're being called to execute in your life plan. You can actually take them and move them to an outer circle. So you can be friends with them, just maybe less frequently, right? Yep. And make sure you pack that inner circle with people that you're either on your life plan or can help you execute your life plan. Yeah. And then the final thing is just make sure you give to those, spend time with those less fortunate. And Frank Blake's example of writing thank you notes is a great example of the generosity of time to other people that make a big difference. So anyway, those are the personal steps. But I'd encourage you to read or listen to the book. It's on Audible as well, and I think there's some useful tools in there for all of us.
100%. It's been transformative for so many people. And Greg, we're so appreciative of your time today. One last fun question to ask you, and we'll let you go. But I heard somebody suggested a sixth F, which is fun. And so what are you doing in the fun category in your life these days?
Well, normally over the holidays, for the last 25 years, we have a house in Colorado, which you've been to, Sean, that we go skiing, but there was no snow this year. So we canceled out on the skiing and stayed here for the first time and played golf.
Nice.
And, not every day, but, many days during that time that we'd kind of normally be skiing. And I was playing on Sunday, the last round of, the holiday with my son, who's 37, and my 5-year-old grandson, who's named after me. I got to hole 6. I birdied 6. I was playing pretty well. I birdied 6. I stepped up on hole 7, which is a 180-yard par 3. I had my first hole-in-one after 64 years.
Nice.
So what I did for fun over the break is I got my first hole-in-one. And I did that with my son and my grandson, and I hit it, and my son said, "Dad, that dropped in the hole." I mean, I hit a good shot, I hit a 5-iron, I hit a really good shot, but it never goes in. And I'm thinking he's just BSing me, that thing rolled off the back of the green or something. And so I was walking up to the green. I didn't realize this, but he was filming the whole thing as I was walking up there. and go into the hole. So I got this cool little 45-second video of finding the ball in the hole and doing that with my son and my grandson. And so my son told his son, Dean, my grandson, he said, Papu, which they call me Papa Dolce, sugar daddy, so the short for that's Papu. He said, Papu just had a hole-in-one. And that means, he said, well, I want a hole-in-one. He said, well, I said, you might have to wait a while, Dean, you're only 5. But he said, what does that mean? And he said, well, that means Papu gets to buy us drinks. When we get to the deal. And so his big deal was, can I have candy too? And I said, yeah, we'll get you some candy too. So anyway, that's what I was doing for fun over the holiday.
That is awesome. Did you freak out and jump around a little bit after seeing it really went in?
Too much, but I was pretty excited. That was a lot of fun. The weird thing about that round is I've been playing pretty well for about 7 rounds or so. Like through Thanksgiving, Christmas, I played more than normal. I usually play once a month or something, but I played really pretty well, mostly in the 70s that whole time. Mm-hmm. And then the 2 rounds before that, I just played terribly. I just lost it. And, it was like between 85 and 90, both of those rounds. And not only had that ace, but I had 3 birdies in that round. Mm-hmm. So that was one that ruined the handicap, but you take those just because you get them. So it was good.
Yeah, so, you played too good.
Yeah, I played too good. Yeah, now I'll pay the price for it when somebody tries to take money from me.
Exactly. Well, Greg, thank you so much for your time. This was an absolute blast, and thank you for all that you do for investing into other people and the Washburn and to teaching lessons that really pay dividends for people both professionally and personally, and it's always so much fun to see you, and thanks for joining the Inspiring Innovation podcast.
You bet. Thanks, Sean. Good luck, and great to see you too. Say hi to Kylene.
I will. All right. Thanks, Greg.
Bye-bye.
Quick disclaimer for this podcast. Greg's book is based on some strong moral codes, and he identifies as a Christian, and he talks about his faith very regularly. And so we just want to let our viewers know that we are inclusive of all faiths and beliefs. And if you have a different belief platform than Greg does, then just take his 5 steps and his values for whatever value that it brings to you. So we're really excited about having him on the podcast, and we really appreciate you listening.